Hey guys, welcome to Casual Film Reviews. I'm here today to review the film called In the Shadow of the Moon. Recently I watched the film Christopher Nolan's Tenet, and it's inspired me so much recently, and I've been addicted to the whole time travel stories and just time manipulation in general. While I was trying to find some time travel films, I came across In the Shadow of the Moon on Netflix, and it was the only one that's been popping up, and I finally gave it a chance while I was editing. To be quite frank with you, right after watching the film, I was a little surprised that it got a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb. At first I was surprised, and I didn't really think much of it because I actually enjoyed the film, weirdly enough. But when I thought about it for a second time, it does make sense that it has that very low score. The story goes as a detective finally gets a case that is weird enough. As he's raising his family, he tries to figure it out what this person was about. It's kind of like a John Doe 7 kind of experience where the detective doesn't know what the motive is of the criminal. So it causes a ruckus in the crowd, and this detective must live on while a lot of bad things are happening in his life. So this affects him, of course, and then it happens again. It's only him that kind of notices it, and he becomes obsessed of the whole case, and nobody's helping him. And eventually we get to a point where he has to learn some kind of lesson, and he understands why those things are happening. Yeah, so it's not too much of a spoiler. So while it was happening, I would say the first half of the film does do a good job in terms of suspense. As a detective story, I was convinced, and I was actually enjoying it. I liked the chemistry between him and his partner. I liked how he played as a father. So yeah, the first half of the film was great. Solid film. Has that very noir 7 feel, very stylistic, right? And as the years go by and as the film starts jumping in time, it started to feel very choppy. The time frame between each time that he stays or each event was very short, and it wasn't satisfying, and it would just cut off at a very moment that I thought would still continue. I wanted to see the aftermath for a lot of those things, but it just didn't make any sense. The film wasn't paced well enough so that it served the story well, at least for me. The first half is a very detective story feel, and then once it started getting choppy, it started losing its identity as a detective story. For me, it was a bit of a jump between when the first and second case to the third case. It was really bizarre seeing that. By the end, they had this philosophical end, and it felt like a Christopher Nolan film. But that's the problem. It felt like it was trying to be a Christopher Nolan film. The twists and turns, it just didn't make any sense, but it wasn't enough to truly understand the character's decision at the very end. And the way that it says about time, which is a little bit of a spoiler here, she says he can't do anything about what is going to happen because it's already in the past. But that's what her mission is, to change the past so the future won't be the way it is. So he could have prevented that, technically. You know what I mean? It's just so bizarre because, like, she could have changed that, knowing that when she jumped into there, then, she just had the power to do something about it, be more careful. But yeah, it was just very wonky. And then the very final revelation was truly confusing, and I was just like, not confusing as in I didn't get it, but it just didn't make any sense in terms of the character as to why he was agreeing to what was going on. He spent about 40 years, was it 30 to 40 years, chasing this one person until that one point where she finally makes a revelation, and he just totally changes and adapts. And it just, I don't know, it just didn't feel like a gradual change. It didn't feel like very organic, because yeah, the first 2 times that they meet each other, they're enemies. So there's no glimpse or no clues that he was actually open to having a conversation with her, but he was forced to have that conversation. And it just didn't make any sense. In the Shadow of the Moon was a very good turn your brain off kind of film, but it did try that sci-fi element, which I do give credit for it, because the structure itself was great. The way that the time traveler was going back in time but getting deeper, that could have had that whole Inception feel to it. Instead of going a dream level deeper, it would be going further into the past so that they could, I guess, have more at stake, because the people that they interact with doesn't necessarily know certain things, so it's very dangerous. And that's why her fate ended up the way that it was. And yeah, and also it just, like, in the beginning, as the first half, I would say it was great, right? But the second half felt like Ghostbusters. With the way the story turned and what it was trying to get at, I just felt like it was a little bit forced. It didn't fit as to what the story initially was. I just didn't understand why, because like that was never part of it in the first place. But it was only up until the second half that it was completely evident. As IMDb says, it is 6.2 out of 10. I would give it like a solid 6.8. It just couldn't land that double landing. It just couldn't do what it tried to be, but at the same time, it tried to be something else. Trying to give you a lesson, trying to be a sci-fi, and trying to be a family story about him and his daughter. And generational family. It tried to be all those, but it was only at the end that they started to be like that. It wasn't like that in the beginning. So yeah, it could have been like an injected idea at the very end of the process, or the creative process, and it could have been a creative difference throughout the thing. So I'm not too sure, but again, this film was a decent try at that whole sci-fi. I believe it deserves a 6.8 out of 10. I believe that people should definitely watch this, should definitely give it a try if they're into that whole time travel story. And Netflix did have a great production in this. Boyd Holbrook does a great job. The actress who does the supporting role, she does great. And the production, the visual effects, everything else in terms of the look of the film was great. It's just a story that didn't make any sense, and that was a downfall of In the Shadow of the Moon. You guys should definitely check it out. It's a good film. It's currently on Netflix. It is a Netflix film, so anybody can watch it. And yeah.